Welcome to Full Discourse. In this episode, I have a very dear friend that comes all the way from the UK across the pond. Her name is Eloise Head, aka... Oh, it's Head? My bad.
That's okay.
See, I'm already fucking up. Her name is Eloise Head, aka Fitwaffle. It was a long time before I even knew your name was Eloise, by the way. I always just referred to you as Fitwaffle. Last time we spoke to Sorted Food, you know the boys at Sorted Food, who defended good British food against the global critique of what British food is. Although you don't necessarily make British food. You do use a lot of British chocolates, which, by the way, is the same as Canadian chocolates.
Okay, so the better chocolates.
I was going to say the superior chocolates. And don't tell an American that. They'll fight you to the death, you know? This time, we're going to be discussing more of like a business kind of like evolution of UK content creation, UK talent, which we obviously saw at the beginning of YouTube, like we saw here in the 2010s. And before we really jump into the meat of that, I just want to say thank you so much for coming all the way from the UK just to be on this podcast.
That's exactly why I came over here.
Like you just got off the plane.
Yeah, that's it.
You came right over here. Now, Eloise is sticking around here this summer, as you do most summers in California or the States in general.
Yeah.
Eloise makes incredible desserts. Actually, not even just desserts anymore. You make a lot of savory food too now.
Yeah, I've branched out a little bit.
Yeah, I like it. But it's path of least resistance, which I'm very familiar with. You make incredible food that is so easily approachable. You are at this point of this podcast, a 3-time published author. The Sunday Times bestseller list, which is the equivalent to the New York Times bestseller list in the UK. You are 3 times on that, which is insane.
Thank you.
And I am just a huge fan. So welcome to Full Discourse. What do you have to say about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, you've pretty much summed it up. So yeah, I create food content. I started Fitwaffle in 2015, but I was taking photos of food back then because Instagram was pretty much all photos back then.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. I was like going into London, taking photos of food, posting them to Instagram. It kind of, I wanted Fitwaffle at first to be a blog. So like an actual written blog. And I was going to talk about what I was doing back then, which is flexible dieting. So hence Fitwaffle. Fitwaffle basically means part of it is my 2 passions, so fitness and food, but it also means fitting all foods into your diet because I'm a big believer in balance and moderation. The waffle part also means waffling on because I tend to talk a lot. So I'm going to try and hold back a little bit.
I didn't know that.
Did you not?
I was like fitness and waffles.
Yeah,
not
well,
fitness.
the waffles also is the food and
so
dessert
it's a
part.
double entendre.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Wow.
That was back in 2015. I was working as a personal trainer at the time. So I did that for about 6 years.
Wow.
And then I went full time with Fitwaffle in the summer of 2019. I was running social media accounts for restaurants. So that's what allowed me to go full time and quit my job as a personal trainer and gym manager. And then lockdown happened in March 2020. So that was, oh my gosh, how many months later? Like 9 months later or something. So I lost a lot of my restaurant clients. And then I started Fitwaffle Kitchen. So that was like this secondary Instagram page. And I basically started posting my recipes online, which is something that I'd always wanted to do, but you never feel like you have the time, right? You know, I was running accounts of restaurants. I was trying to do my own thing. I was also trying to make YouTube videos and post to TikTok and you try and do everything, right? But then obviously lockdown happened and I was like, oh, I have like all this time. I've lost clients. What else am I going to do except for stay home like everyone else? And, I started basically making recipe videos and it was the start of something incredible. That's what I got my book deal from. And the book deal came quite quickly. So I was approached by a literary agent I think it was November 2020.
So like 9 months.
Yeah.
You did 9 months
was
of restaurants
so
lockdown.
fast.
Then 9 months later, all of a sudden you're writing a
Literally.
cookbook.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Literally. It's crazy.
So blessing in disguise, right?
Uh-huh.
I feel like for you, and there's so many other people that kind of capitalize off that. Obviously, you don't want to say like you benefited from a pandemic.
It sounds awful, doesn't it?
It sounds. I mean, it doesn't sound awful per se, but you do what you can, right? Like there's always in life. There's always luck. There's always like a stroke of luck, no matter what. Like you have to
time and a place kind of thing.
Always. And when you strike when the iron's hot, in this sense, which you did, 4 years later. Multiple book deals, millions upon millions of followers, billions of views.
Yeah, crazy.
Come on, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and now you're
ridiculous.
here talking to me.
Exactly. We've hit the peak.
Yeah. What was the first video or recipe that you posted where you're like, oh, this is a thing?
It was 3-ingredient Oreo fudge.
Amazing.
So obviously it's so simple. And the first time I made it, I burnt the whole thing and it went totally wrong. I just stopped stirring it in the pan, like walked away probably to go to the bathroom for like 1 minute, came back and was like, oh no, the whole thing had burned. And I was like, oh, do I do it again? Like I've just wasted time. I've just wasted like money and stuff. So I was like, no, I'll do it again. I can't get it wrong a second time. It's so easy. And I made it. I posted the recipe online and was like, guys, keep stirring. Don't do what I did. And I think, so Fitwaffle Kitchen was, a page with almost 0 followers. And when I posted this video, it basically went viral. I think within a couple of weeks, it had something like 30 or 40 million views.
That's real viral.
Just crazy. And
that's
this was before Reels
That's
as well.
not like how people were like, oh, it went viral. Like, oh my God, how many views? They're like 1,000.
100K.
Like, I'm not downplaying that. Like, that's a lot of views for anybody for sure. But viral is 30 million views in a week. Like, let's be honest.
With not many followers on your page.
Exactly.
Obviously, I had Fitwaffle, which is my other page, which had, I think, maybe around 350,000 followers at that point. It might have had more. I can't remember. But, it was a decent amount. So obviously I can be like, hey, guys, go to this page.
Sure.
But that's not what made the post go viral.
No, it was 3-ingredient fudge.
Exactly.
I remember seeing that for sure. I remember seeing that.
And it's such a funny video as well. Like when I look back at it, the voiceover makes me cringe so much.
We all go back on the history. I mean, like when you do this for a long time, like you go back, you could see the moments. I talk about it all the time on this podcast. Like my first video where I was solo cooking is the cringiest thing ever. Like it's so bad. But like anything, the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get, right? You have billions of views, millions of followers. Thousands of recipes, right?
Yeah.
You use a lot of brands in your food. Like we were talking about it when we hung out a couple weeks ago, and I was telling you how one of my favorite styles that you do are the cheesecakes. Yeah. Love those. You often use Twix. You often use Kit Kats. Obviously Oreo, as we just discussed. But like, there's such a big difference in getting paid for a brand and from a brand and not and just using it because it's good. Like I do the same thing. Like my style of cooking is similar in the same family of the style of cooking you do, where we used specific branded ingredients like Oreos and all that stuff to make different things, right? But I guess the difference is, and what you told me was that in the UK, the stipulation, the legalities of using a branded product versus getting paid for a branded product is far different than it is from here. Sure. Now we're jumping right into the meat, the Oreo cream of this episode here. You told me that you've obviously been paid by Oreo to create recipes, but then
I've never been paid by Oreo to create
recipes. You've told me you've never been paid by Oreo, but you did say something that struck out to me, that if you do get paid by a brand to make one video, you have to then disclose that you were paid by that, even if you don't get paid for another video. Yeah.
So as far as I'm aware from the guidelines that we're given, basically, if you work with a company, let's say it's just like a one-off Instagram post, for example, and you've been paid by this company to post this post, and obviously you disclose it, you put ad on it. The next time I say, let's take Oreo as an example. The next time I use Oreos in a recipe, if obviously I clearly show the branding and I say, hey, it's an Oreo milkshake or Oreo fudge or whatever, then technically I have to disclose that I've worked with that company in the past.
So it could be like a year later.
I don't know. I think there might be like a time frame on it. Like it might be a year or 2 years later or something, but it's still a long time to say that you have, oh, by the way, guys, this isn't an ad, but it kind of is because I've worked with this company in the past, even though I'm not being paid to post this post 2 months later. You know, it's totally off my own back, use loads of their products before without any incentive. And I think that's why they do it. It's, if you've worked with a brand in the past, then they view it that you've been incentivized to use that brand again.
So what's crazy to me is, let's say you get a statement of work from a brand. One, for those of you who don't know, the way it usually works is XYZ brand pays you a certain amount of money for a certain amount of posts. It could be a dedicated video on Instagram and TikTok. It could be a one video on one platform. Maybe there could be a story, social support attached to that. And normally there's like a certain amount of time afterwards where you can't use another brand in competition, like a 30-day non-compete or whatever. After that time is over and you want to use that product again, you do not have to, here at least, you do not have to say hashtag ad or paid partnership or tag them or whatever, because that's like not part of the statement of work. So so here it's like, what over there, it's like you get infinite amount of promotion, even though you're not getting paid for it.
I guess so,
which is so backwards to me.
It sounds backwards to me as well.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it really puts me off working with certain brands.
Right.
Like, even though Oreo would be a perfect fit for me because I already use it, you know, I've created millions, if not billions of views with Oreo products anyway.
Billions for sure.
I mean, you know, a lot of my most popular videos are using their products, for example. You know, I would be put off from working with them because I use their products so much. They pay me like once, and then suddenly everything from then on has to be disclosed as an advert. It just, to me, that looks less genuine.
So do you think that like it's even Oreo that cares, or is it, what's that company called again?
ASA.
The
Advertising Standards Agency.
The Authority,
is it?
Okay, advertising standards. It's not even Oreo. It's not even the brand.
No.
It's the law.
No, I think the brand would prefer it to not have such strict guidelines, because we have to the brand has to comply, the influencer, the person has to also comply, because we're both trying to do as we're told.
The best brands get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the best brands, like someone will send me something, and I don't ever want to promote something that like I'm not already going to use. You know, fortunately for the stuff that I create, like I love it. I love like the cheesy, meaty, like you know, whatever. But like the right brand pays you. But if they're not going to pay you, maybe they're going to send you something free. Maybe not. They're not going to care that you're using their brand if you're getting 1 million views on a video. They're going to love it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, how often does a brand hit you up and is like, can we post this video?
Oh, well, as in like, can I post one of my, can they post one of my videos?
Yeah.
So often.
Do you let them?
No.
You shouldn't.
No.
You got to hold that on that.
So I think, so in the past, you know, when you're growing, right, every opportunity feels like an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, a big company will reach out to you, or the brand will reach out to you, and they'll say like, hey, can we repost this on our page? And you'll just go, yeah, go ahead. But I think now, like what I didn't realize at the time is these big companies, especially the media companies, and obviously the brands as well, they will make direct money out of your content and you get nothing for it.
Yeah.
You know, you might get a little bit of exposure, but nowadays I just don't feel like it does anything.
I completely agree. You know how many times, look, I'm not that big of a creator, but there's a lot of times, like I forgot what they're called, but those companies that just repost everyone's videos, right? They'll hit me up like, hey, we have 100 million followers across these accounts. We love your videos. Yeah. Is it okay if we post it? And my answer to that is always, I have no problem doing that. Like, what's the revenue split? And they're always like, oh, we don't really have any money for that right now. And I'm like, well, you're going to earn money on that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to really, we're not going to talk about that. It's not the brand that's getting pissed. It's the ASA that's the lawman that's like kind of trying to control who gets what type of promotion, which doesn't make any sense to me. But it goes even further than that, right? Like there's apparently a blacklist from the ASA, and I even have a link here. There is.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Non-compliant social media influencers. That is wild.
So you can just access that.
I
don't
literally
think I've
just
actually
accessed
ever
it right
seen the
now.
list. Okay, interesting.
Okay. Non-compliant social media influencers. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. This is an actual list.
Yeah.
Influencer name, social handle.
Wow.
Do you know these
that's
people?
Crazy.
Okay, I'm going to name a couple of these influencers. You tell me if you've ever heard of them.
Sure.
Tasha Ghouri.
Yeah.
Jack Jossa.
No.
Charlotte Dawsey.
No.
Scott G. Shore. Okay, 1 for 4.
But G Shore to me says Geordie Shore, so I assume they're from there. But no,
Gordy Shore. Gordy? You're probably right about that.
Yeah.
What is that? The trashy
it's just a TV. I've never watched
Jersey
it,
Shore, but
yeah,
like
that's it.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
the one.
Oh, they even have non-compliant advertisers on here.
Oh, do they?
That
okay.
is wild. Oh my God.
But yeah, so anyone, I guess, and brands as well
Skinny
can
Coffee
look up.
Club. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Chocolate Frog Company.
Never heard of them, but okay.
These are probably like whatever, honestly. Like who even cares? Anyways, okay, so we've established the fact that there's
a legit blacklist
for not only influencers but also for brands, which that's a whole other thing I didn't even think of. Brands that can't advertise with influencers.
Well, it doesn't mean they can't advertise. It's just a list to say, hey, these guys don't always disclose their ads.
Okay.
So it's a warning to people.
Here's a question about what you just said.
Yeah.
So the traditional, I don't even like saying traditional because like at this point, like what we do is traditional media, right? Legacy media stars, let's call them. Like I don't know, like a movie star or like an athlete.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that they rarely disclose their ads? Like,
I haven't noticed.
Okay, here, I don't know how it is over there, but here, like Kendall Jenner will post something for an ad and there will be no hashtag ad, no paid partnership, nothing.
Yeah.
Yet,
I've noticed over here that, for example, what's accepted would not be accepted in the UK. So someone might put like partnership with such and such or like such and like brand partner. And like that, for example, in the UK just doesn't fly.
What do you have to do in the UK?
We have to put ad and it has to be, it's either like right at the beginning or it's within the first sentence. So, like say on TikTok, when you have to click see more, it has to be above that.
Right. So
it has to be visible at all times on your video.
So they say it has to do that here too.
Okay.
I get dinged, not dinged, but like I'll like post something and like sometimes a brand that I work with wants me to like bake in a hashtag in the video. When I say bake in, I mean like in the video, not like a hashtag over the video so you can click the hashtag.
Right.
Like it's got to be in the edited version. And I'm like, guys.
So what, just the words on screen somewhere?
Yeah, like you can't click that. They're like, we don't care. We have to do that.
Okay, yeah. It's
and I'm just like,
visible,
yeah. And I'm like, well, what's the point? The point of a hashtag is to be able to click the hashtag to see the posts that are attached to the hashtag.
Sure.
When it's in the video, it's not clickable, right? And they're always like, no, you can't do that. We want you to do it this way. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, all right, well, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to do that, I'll quit here. Sure. No problem. Then, or like I'll in a description over the see more, like, cause that's a normal practice here. I'll put like I'll say, I won't put hashtag ad. It'll in the Instagram post, let's say it'll say paid partnership by insert brand here.
Yeah, sure.
And they'll kind of be like, no, you have to put in the description paid partnership for. And then I see like a legacy celebrity, nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, these people don't do anything for that. Why are you dinging me? Like, why do social media people like us get the brute end of that? You know, which brings me to my thing about like the UK. Like, if you got a brand deal while you're here, you've been here for a substantial amount of time. You're going to be here for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
If you got a brand deal here with an American brand, would you still have to comply with the UK legislation?
I assume so, but I don't know.
Okay.
I probably would, to be safe, because I'd probably verge on being like with the stricter version.
Look,
rather than
I'm a rule abider. I am a rule abider.
I'd rather not end up on the blacklist, you know?
Yeah, seriously. Like, for real. Let's talk about sort of the history of this sort of stuff. You had mentioned earlier, obviously I know, but and now the audience does, if you've been listening since the beginning, you started off as a personal trainer. You managed a gym. You wanted to explore flexible eating, flexible dieting.
Yeah.
And then obviously you lost you were also doing restaurant marketing via social media. Who did you grow up watching on social media? Like, whether, back then when we were younger, it was just YouTube basically.
Sure.
But who do you remember from the UK, like creator wise, that you started following on YouTube and online?
Oh my gosh.
And were they food people at all?
Okay, so I can't really remember specific names, but I know that because I was so into fitness, like it was my life. I was, when I was 18, 19, I did a personal training course and I lived, breathed, ate gym. Like fitness was literally everything. So all I remember my social media being was just fitness people.
Got it.
It was bodybuilders. It was bikini competitors. It was just like people on social media talking about fitness, talking about food you should eat for fitness, etc. So that was what literally consumed my life and my mind at that point. And it was so damaging.
I mean, in theory, it kind of brought you to here right now.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I think everything has a path.
Yeah.
And I feel like I went through that and it led me to obviously bring myself out of it, and then to obviously where I am now, and the way that I think of like about food now and my relationship with food now is so good in comparison to what it was.
That's amazing. That's
so
good.
Yeah.
Silver lining.
Yeah, 100%.
Back then, like in the beginning of YouTube, let's say 2009, 2010, where really like everyone was sort of like not gaining celebrity status by any means, but like people were creating on YouTube back then everywhere.
Sure.
Some people were more popular than others. You had like, the Dan and Phils of the world and the Zoellas of the world back then who were in the UK. Do you find that the fandom in the UK was really crazy around that time for UK content creators? Do you feel like people in the UK kind of like saw their creators as traditional celebrities? Does that make any sense?
I don't really remember, to be totally honest, being that interested in just general social media in, say, at the beginning. So like in 2010. But a couple of things that I do remember, Zoella, you use as an example, she ended up with a line, like a beauty product line in Superdrug, which is one of our like main beauty stores. So for an influencer that was, on YouTube, to have a like cosmetic line or beauty line in a major high street store was like crazy, because usually it would only be celebrities that would have that sort of thing.
Right.
So I think that's probably one of the first, I guess, products or like influencer collaborations that I was like, oh wow, because I don't even remember. I never really watched her, so I don't know that much about her. But seeing that and then being like, oh, this girl's a YouTuber, like that was kind of crazy.
So I completely agree with that. Like seeing people who you watched on YouTube who weren't celebrity by any means, these random people that sort of built these followings in Sephora or Superdrug or whatever, the same thing with me, seeing stuff like that. And that's kind of like when you realize like, oh, this is like a viable career for these people, right? Like if they're getting millions of views on YouTube, I could feel it. Like I remember back then, these people were getting millions of views a day. Everyone knew them. And then all of a sudden they're doing what traditional celebrities are doing at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting to think about back then because it was just the beginning of YouTube, and now how far we've come.
Yeah.
Sunday Times bestseller 3 times in a row. Multiple book deals, multiple billions of views. Like you have been on television, mm-hmm. you've done so many cool things, all from the internet, and not even YouTube at that point, right? The evolution of social media has come so far, and you can attest to this too. Every platform has its own ecosystem.
Yeah.
TikTok's got their own ecosystem. Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, even YouTube, traditional YouTube long form versus YouTube shorts, different ecosystems. So different, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's just really interesting, like how far we've come. Legacy creators, legacy celebrities, people that have like done acting or sporting or music or anything like that, they're all coming to our side.
Yeah. So I feel that TV now wants more social media, if that makes sense. Like traditional media wants what social media has. Like they want to be big on social media. And then I also feel, especially in the UK, that social media stars also then want a bit of the TV stuff too. Like if you ask people in the UK, like, oh, what's your next goal or whatever, what's your next step? They go, I want to be on TV. And then people that have been on TV go, I don't want to be on TV anymore. I just want to do social media.
People who are on television, people who are, have long careers on, let's say, like BBC Food and all these mm-hmm. types of things, they all want to have a presence on social media. A lot of the times, younger generations who are making tons of money and have so much notoriety on things like Kick and Twitch mm-hmm. and YouTube and Instagram and all these things, they don't care to be on television because their audience isn't even on television.
Agreed, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I remember back in 2012 when we were like, when we were popping off and doing our thing on YouTube, Jamie Oliver, who I'm sure you've heard of, who's a huge inspiration in why I started getting into food, regardless of the controversy that may surround him or people's views on him. He was a huge inspiration into why I got into just watching food and liking food, regardless of the internet. Then you fast forward so many years later and we were like super popular on YouTube, and he hadn't started doing any YouTube. He reached out to us to help him start his YouTube mm-hmm. career. In fact, the cookbook that I did write, he wrote the foreword for.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
It's very cool. It was kind of a parody. He mocked up a fake lawyer's letter,
right,
and sent it to us being like, this is a cease and desist, stop contacting Jamie Oliver. It was this whole really funny thing.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, but I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, it's this weird kind of like contrast of TV people wanting to go on the internet and the internet people wanting to go on television, when like in reality the audiences are so polarizingly different.
Yeah, definitely.
Like most people I know that watch traditional television
mm-hmm.
are like my parents and their friends,
and they don't have a clue who anyone is on social media.
No, and if they do, that person is huge.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, come on, like
they've
really
got to be
big.
really mainstream,
exactly.
Or they have to have been on TV,
yes.
and then they go, oh, I've just found out who this person is.
Like, did you hear about that? Yeah. Did you hear about this person?
For 10 years.
I saw them on like the Today Show or something like that,
exactly.
You know?
I remember, so there was a guy, when we had some storms in the UK, he basically films planes at Heathrow Airport. Yeah. So, one of our biggest airports in the UK. And he was live streaming it to, I can't remember how many people it was, but it was hundreds of thousands of people were watching his YouTube live stream.
Just planes.
Basically, he would commentate on them, and they'd fly in, and some of them would sort of hit the ground and then come straight back up again because they couldn't land their planes. So all these people were fascinated by watching these planes land. And on his live stream, basically, whoever he was with, they said, oh, I think it was the BBC or one of the big news channels had contacted him to be like, hey, do you want to come speak on the news, on the TV about like what you're doing right now? Yeah. And he was like, no, I'm streaming to like 250,000 people. I don't want to come on your show right now.
Yeah. To like God knows how many people. It's just crazy how far I've come. I remember I've said this on the show before, so forgive me if you've heard me say this, but when I quit my job in how old am I? Way too old. In like 2013 when I quit, or 2011 when I quit my job to do YouTube full time, my dad, he looked at me and he literally said, word for word, "Do you really think that YouTube is going to be bigger than television?" And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
do
out.
actually.
I'm out. And now my dad, all he watches is YouTube.
That's
You know what I mean?
funny.
It is funny because we've really come a long way. But I always like say to my dad, I'm like, yo, when you were a kid and your dad was like listening to radio and he said to you, "Do you really think TV is gonna like go take over?" It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Evolution, you know?
When I quit my job, I remember I was so scared to tell my boss, but I was pretty confident in my decision, you know, in what I was doing. And I remember him basically warning me about how risky it was in what I was doing, you know, basically sort of saying to me, "Do you really think this is a good idea?" I mean, he was probably trying to convince me to stay, you know, by almost, I guess, scaring me. But, you know, he sort of sat me down almost like a father figure and was really like, "Do you really think this is the best decision? Like what you're doing is really risky." And I just had to be like, "No, I'm pretty sure."
How do you feel about that risk situation? Like risk versus reward? You know, like everyone in history has always said, like, you have to take a risk sometimes and maybe it won't pay off, but it's like a learning experience. Like I felt the same way. It was a risk, but like, you know, I've been doing this for 14 years at this point. Like obviously the risk paid off.
Yeah.
You know, it's scary, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's and it should be scary. You're diving into your own business, uncharted territory.
It's really an unknown world. I mean, I had never been self-employed before. Luckily, my husband, Bernie, had. So he knew a little bit more about the whole business side of it and what it takes to run your own business than I did because I'd always been employed. And I wasn't very old. I mean, I don't know how old I was in 2019 now. I can't do the maths in my head. But, you know, I had only had 2 real jobs before that. And someone else was always paying my wages. And I would just rely on a paycheck coming in every month because even if I just had to turn up to work, I really didn't have to do anything else except for do my job. But now, you know, you have to make sure that work actually is coming in and, you know, you are creating money because, I mean, people talk about how volatile, say, a platform like Facebook is because one month you can have a really good month and you can earn lots of money from it. And then the next month you can earn next to nothing. And you go, "Oh, is this the new normal?" Because that's a bit scary. You know, you just don't know. Same with brand deals.
Everything. It's all about multiple sources of income.
Agreed.
And that's business in general because
100%.
you can't rely on one source in case that source, like you just said, goes away. If you have multiple, then you can always rely on the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's business 101.
Yeah.
For
100%.
whatever. And it is scary to go on your own. And you know what? Like clocking in and clocking out at a job is fulfilling for a lot of people. And that's okay.
Sometimes it sounds great. Like
I completely
sometimes
agree.
when I'm working at 11 o'clock at night or until 1 a.m, I'm like, you know what? Finishing at 5 o'clock in the in the evening and doing whatever I want and not having to think about work for until the next day when I go in at 9 sounds amazing right now.
100%. And I would never take that away from anyone. But there's also a lot of gratification in running your own business.
Definitely, yeah.
Seeing results, you know, like
direct results from what you do,
Exactly.
not what your small part of a company does.
Also, you're creating on a regular basis. Like I know that you know how it feels to take an idea in your head, put it to visual, and then to be able to eat it too is even better.
Oh yeah.
There's so many more things. Yeah. It's just a cool thing and it's so fulfilling. Obviously, like running any business, there's a lot of like, you know, BS that goes in the back end of it, administration, editing, all these types of things. But with that being said, like creating a recipe, let's jump into the recipe like ideation for a second. What kind of process do you usually have from like coming up with an idea? And also to add to that, where do you get your inspiration from? Like when it comes to creating a recipe that you haven't yet done, what's the inspiration? Like what's the practice that you use? Unless it's a trade secret, you don't have to say. I don't want to get into it. And then on top of like creating all those things, what kind of like legalities do you think about in terms of using a brand?
The whole creating a recipe process is so different for every recipe, because I would say, like, especially now, it's so much easier because I don't want to say perfected, but like I've got my base recipes down. So, for example, to make a cheesecake, it really is just biscuits, cookies mixed with butter for the base. And then it's just cream cheese, icing sugar or powdered sugar, double cream, heavy whipping cream. And that is literally your cheesecake. And then from there, you can pretty much add whatever you want to it. And as long as you have a basic knowledge of sort of how much, say, Oreos to put in, how much Biscoff spread to put in, for example, or, you know, if you're going to put something that's quite runny in it, it might not set if you do that. So you either need to put a really small amount in or you need to add gelatin. You know, as long as you have sort of a basic idea of those kind of things and what could potentially go wrong with stuff, I feel like from there, it's just ideas. You know, it's going, I've done this cheesecake before. What if I use this flavor and I'll use this cookie for the base and I'll put this chocolate in it. And then for the topping, I'll put whipped cream and I'll put M&Ms on the top. And, you know, you sort of build the picture in your head of it and what flavors you think will go well together. When it actually comes to creating a brand new recipe, you know, let's say you're creating a brownie recipe for the first time. You know, I might have tried, say, multiple other brownie recipes in the past. And I go, okay, this is what I liked about this one. This is what I liked about this one. What if I do it this way? Or, you know, you look up, how do I get that crackly top on a brownie? And then you find out the answer from researching on the internet, or you watch multiple YouTube videos of someone saying, this is how you make the perfect brownie. I just feel like it's sort of an amalgamation of all of this like information that you've been taught in your head that goes into what you think would be your perfect brownie, for example, or, you know, how you can make your cakes better or something like that. And I feel like I'm forever learning when it comes to baking. You know, baking is such a science, and sometimes I'll listen to someone and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like the first time anyone's ever said that. And then I'll go, that's why that wasn't working. Or that's why my brownie looks like this and not like that. Or so the best thing for me sometimes, I say best, it's kind of bittersweet. Someone comes to me and they say, hey, this part of this recipe hasn't worked. What am I doing wrong? And I'm like, oh, well, every time I've done it, it works. So what are they doing that they can't get right? And you have to go back and forth with this person for like a few messages to find out what it is they're doing that is making that part of the recipe not work, for example. And then finally you get to the bottom of it and you're like, oh, I just need to say in like this part of the video, make sure it looks like this, or make sure this isn't too hot when you add it, because one little thing, like in baking, you know, it could be the temperature of your butter is too hot and that's why it's not working. It's melting your sugar, for example. You know, so it sounds kind of so simple, but then sometimes because it is so simple, you forget these little things like, oh, well, I let my butter cool for 10 minutes and I haven't said that. That's actually really important. So, yeah.
You take it for granted because you've done it so many times,
Yeah, you do it
right?
so many times. You know, I know what whipped cream to stiff peaks looks like, but someone else might not know that you really have to whip it. And, you know, using an electric mixer makes such a difference as well. Yeah. You know, people are saying I'm doing it by hand. I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, please get an electric mixer.
You're going to get carpal tunnel. There's so many things you just said that I want to talk about. First of all, really appreciate, not only for me, but for anyone who's listening, the fact that you like did the American UK equivalent to everything you just said. You're like biscuits or cookies, double cream or whipped cream, powdered sugar or icing sugar. So that was so like, that's how you know you're trained. Like you get it. Because obviously you have a huge audience in the States, right?
Yes, yeah.
What would you say like your audience's breakdown is? Like, do you know the breakdown? I mean, obviously you know the breakdown.
Bernie, my husband, will know the breakdown.
Okay, we'll ask him later.
I am not the statistics person.
Okay.
You know, if I would have to literally go on my phone and look it up. Yeah. But I think it's pretty equal UK to US.
Cool. Very awesome. The way you explain coming up with recipes is exactly the way I think about recipes too. And what I mean by that is, okay, you know that, I mean, look, I rarely bake. Mm-hmm. I think it's terrifying. It's very scientific, and I'm very impatient. So
I'm impatient too, but for some reason I still like baking.
and honestly, you're really, really good at it. I've definitely used some of your recipes before, and I feel I approach cooking and creating recipes the exact same way. First of all, you have an idea in your head, right? That's where it always starts. Even with like drawing a picture, like you know what the picture wants to look like, right? You know the base of the picture. And then what you said about like supplementing or substituting rather like ingredients for other ingredients, you know, you're going to use M&Ms on top, or maybe you're going to use like salted caramel or whatever. Like that is exactly the same way I do it. You have a banger of a recipe. You know that this recipe works. And then you're just going to kind of like tweak it and run it through like the gamut of like what you do. Like if it's Twix or if it's Oreo or if it's Kit Kat. For me, it's like pesto chicken or buffalo chicken or like, you know what I mean? Like we do that all the time. I don't know about you, but I say this so many times. Like, I don't really know if this is going to work or not.
Yeah.
In my head. I literally, every time I make a recipe, I'm like, not sure if this is going to work, you know, but
so people often ask me, you know, do you test before you film? And I'm like, no, the filming is the test.
Same here. Same here.
Like, because the thing is, if it works first time and it's perfect, I want it to be on camera.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to make it again if you know, because it worked perfectly the first time. And if it didn't work, I've got it on camera and I can work out what I did wrong.
So how often, if it doesn't work, do you tweak it to make it work? Or and
it depends how bad the fail is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was my next question is like, and how often do you just say F it and
it really depends how bad it is. If it's just the fact that I've overcooked it, I'll do it again because that was just my error when it got to the last stage and I overcooked it, and that's just really annoying.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I should have known what it looks like. I've done this similar thing before and I've just overcooked it. You know, and that's really annoying. And you know, it's still edible. It's just not always worthy for the camera.
Fair.
You know, so someone go, it looks dry, and I'm like, yeah, it is.
Sometimes I'll be like, that looks dry as hell. I'm like, nah, it's great. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, I know it's dry. Yeah.
And sometimes I've just roll with it and be like, guys, I overcooked it. Like, you need to undercook yours a little bit more than I did, kind of thing. But yeah, other times, if it's a bad fail, and I'm trying to think of an example of stuff that I haven't redone. I think one, I was cooking like some sort of chocolate truffle, and I had tried, I think 3 times already, and it just wasn't going to plan. And it sort of got to the part where I was like, I'm not doing this again. You know, maybe in a year's time I might come back to it. But at this point, I can't do a 4th and have it fail again, because it gets to the point where you're like, am I just wasting my time now?
Yeah.
So, and also if I'm finding it this difficult, I don't want to put it out to my audience who are also going to find it this difficult. I mean, maybe they won't. But you know, if I can't figure it out, and I'm not saying I'm the best baker or anything, but if I've tried 4 times and I have experience and I'm the one creating the recipe and it's still not working, then I think, it's too complicated.
How often do you see another creator post something that inspires you and like maybe like gives you a little bit of a tip? Like, for example, let's say you're doing this the 4th time. You're like, nah, I'm done with this. And then all of a sudden you see something, you're like, oh, I could do it like that.
Yes.
Does that happen to you often?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I think social media is great for getting ideas, getting inspiration, and also like figuring out your problems sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, especially YouTube, because people tend to go more in depth.
Yeah.
So, you know, it might be that you're trying to figure out the answer to something and you watch one YouTube video and you go, oh, that's it. And, you know, you've just figured it out and that's the only knowledge you needed to know, or that, you know, you're putting in baking soda, for example, and you just didn't need to.
Right.
So you take it out and then it works perfectly. So I think I think social media and the internet is great for that sort of stuff, because so many people have so much different knowledge. That's not good English, is it?
I get what you're saying. Everyone's got different things to say and different perspectives and like approach things differently.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. Wrapping up, we're almost at the end, but like I wanted to really ask you about this. You make predominantly short form content.
Yes.
But you obviously watch YouTube, especially when it comes to wanting to learn and all these types of things. Do you feel like the long form content is less approachable now as a content creator than a short form. What I mean by that is I personally think it's way more daunting to make long form content than it is to make short form content. But I talk to my friends that make long form content and they say the opposite because of frequency.
Yeah.
Like how often are you posting? Almost every day, right?
Yeah. So I would say, especially throughout lockdown, I was creating every day. I was posting every day. I mean, I don't post quite as frequently anymore, but yeah, like for me, short form is almost a habit.
Yeah.
You know, I know what I'm doing. I know how I film. I know how I edit. I've sort of, it's become so much a routine that I don't have to think about it as much anymore. And with long form, it's not routine at all because it's not what I mean. And think about the amount of short form videos that you might have created and the frequency that you've done them compared to what you would do with long form. You know, because long form videos, let's say you post once a week versus you might post a short every day. Well, you're posting short form 7 times long form. So you're basically having 7 times the amount of practice that you are of doing long form.
Yeah.
So, and it's way more time consuming. For me, it takes so much more energy, being on the camera because it takes hours as well. If I'm recording a YouTube video, my back hurts by the end of it. Like my feet hurt. The kitchen's an absolute mess. I've got all these studio lights up. I've got 3 cameras going. It's just crazy. And then I'll go, oh my gosh, it's 11 o'clock at night. Like I need to go to bed. I've got to edit this video tomorrow. The edit's going to take me hours as well.
That's the most daunting for me is the editing.
It's just so much.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah, like it is daunting. And I think that people that have been doing long form for a long time, a lot of the time they have a lot of people that also help them. So, they have an editor, they might have a videographer, they might have someone that works with them to design the entire thing that they're going to do. And they just come in, they stand there, they do their thing, and then they don't have to worry about it because someone else takes care of the background stuff. Whereas when you're very new at it, like I am still with the long form, then you basically do everything yourself. Like you have to worry about getting everything right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally think that it's way more daunting to do long form.
I completely
especially when
agree.
you first start.
No, I completely agree. And even like, the business behind it is completely different too. Like it's a whole different business plan. It's like making television shows versus making movies. Like sure, you're both making production, but it is very different. Very different. We covered a lot of awesome stuff on today's episode of Full Discourse with Josh Elkin. I really, really, really appreciate you coming down. You've become a good friend, and I love your content. And any closing remarks? Anything you want to promote? Do you have any like new publications coming out? Are you working on any new books or anything like that?
I think I'm allowed to say this. I am working on a new book,
okay,
which will be book 4.
Wow. Congrats.
But I won't say what it is.
That's cool.
I won't give any more away.
It's
but
cool.
I am working on it, which
Amazing.
is exciting.
That is very exciting. Eloise Head, aka Fitwaffle, Full Discourse. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Full Discourse is a podcast hosted by me, Josh Elkin, produced by Diane Kang, Melissa D. Montz, and Diamond M Print Productions. Camera operator Jeff Liu, post-production sound by Coco Lawrence, production assistance by Melanie D. Watson, and music by me.